Happy Friday, everybody. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. I'm your host, Jeremiah Fox. We're going to start this weekend off the right way with some really awesome vibes, really great messages for life and for everything. Before I introduce my guest today, we're going to start with our quote of the day, one in which I've heard my guest say many times has had a profound impact on me. And it is, don't wish things were easier, wish you were better. Sound familiar?
Sure does.
Sure does. You want to elaborate on that for just a moment before we go any further? There's going to be a lot of these today, so get your notepad out. We got a lot of good content today.
Well, I definitely say that's something I repeat to myself every day because I believe the resistance is real, and no matter what's happening, even if your life is awesome, everything's going the way it should, there's always going to be that resistance, which I feel is your counter purpose. We have a purpose, and we have to have the resistance. So whenever I hit that, and something I encourage our students at Sun Dojo to do as well, is just say, hey, don't wish it was easier. Find a solution. Get out of your head. Think about something different. Move your body and find a solution rather than just wallowing in this wah, wah, which we can all go to, and myself included.
Right. It's discussed so many times. The negative energy is always there. You can choose to go towards that.
Yeah.
But the positive energy is always there too, and you can choose to go towards that. And I've heard many times it said the mind has a negative bias, so it's easier. Like that's kind of the resistance, right? It's like
it's crazy. You got two legs at work. You wake up, the sun rose today. I mean, we can all celebrate these things, but you forget it, and you're like,
my toe hurts.
Small insignificant things. But I think if we just felt that gratitude every second of every day, we wouldn't be pushed to do anything. So we need that struggle. Otherwise, why bother?
Right.
So you have to embrace it.
Boy, this is starting out hot fire. Like I said, get your notepad. This is just the beginning. There's going to be a lot. So before we go any further, I'd love to introduce my guest this week, Professor Laurel Carroll. She is my Jiu Jitsu instructor, neighboring business owner to a couple of my businesses in Windsor Terrace. Awesome human being. Just going to read a little bit about her, and then I'll let her digress on that. So she was born and raised in City Island in the Bronx and attended LaGuardia High School for the Fine Art in Manhattan. After the fall of the Twin Towers, she started acupuncture school where she met her future husband. She went on to practice acupuncture for 10 years before focusing her energy on her family martial arts school in 2016. She dabbled in martial arts for many years before training kickboxing and Brazilian Jiu Jitsu. She earned her black belt in Brazilian Jiu Jitsu from Professor Stuart Carroll. She is the mother of 2 daughters and lives with her family in Brooklyn. Welcome.
Thank you.
Happy Friday. It's so cool to have you here. Such an honor.
Thank you so much. I'm super honored.
Yeah, thank you. So why don't we start by having you talk about where you grew up and what life was like in City Island and the Bronx and New York at that time, and kind of how maybe that influenced your direction towards the martial arts.
Well, City Island was kind of kind of called the Riviera of the Bronx. It's a weird seafaring community in the edge of the Bronx.
Lots of seafood, right?
Lots of crappy seafood, to be honest, and could use a nice, good restaurant there. But
well, we'll talk about that.
Yeah. It's a small community. You know everybody, which is good and bad. The doors are open, and it's a very kind of isolated community.
Right.
We spend a lot of time as kids. I go to school, come home. I used to walk to the babysitters all the way across the island. It was a very safe little enclave. And weird, it was everybody has a nickname. There's Whitey and Crazy Mary and
Jimmy the Shoe and stuff like that. Yeah,
definitely. I mean, there's definitely a bunch of characters, if you know what I mean.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of Guidos, and as a teenager, I have no problem. My family's Italian, and as a kid, it was all about getting off the rock.
I feel like you could defend yourself if anybody got upset by that statement.
Well, yeah. I mean, I'm all about the love, right? I'm not trying to say anybody's bad or good. It's just that City Island we used to call it the Rock, and we do everything possible as teenagers to get off the rock. And we would bus, train. I went to high school in Manhattan, as you know. I had to escape. But there was good times. We did a lot of hanging out and a lot of swimming out to boats. And like the classic story is we'd put our cigarettes in our hair and barrette them into our banana clips. And we'd swim like a mile out and sit on boats. And that was something we did a lot. And but it was a safe community. And I went to Catholic school for a year. in Westchester, because the schools around us were just not really.
Yeah.
My parents were like, "Oh no," because we used to go to Catholic. We used to go to dances, and there'd literally be like Albanian shootouts at the local school. I've seen this multiple times. But our island was very safe. But then that being said, so I spent a year in Catholic school, and it was a breaking point for me. It was a turning point. It was saying, you know what, this sucks.
In terms of what?
Well, I had big hair at the time, and I didn't want to get rid of my big hair.
I think everybody had big hair. But
well, not the preps. Okay, so there was a little bit of a dichotomy there.
I had big hair back then too.
I'm not surprised. You still have big beard hair sometimes. Yeah, I don't know. I just didn't fit in. I didn't feel right. So I started at the Catholic school.
Oh, in City Island.
Oh, City Island felt right.
Okay.
That was a weird insular environment. And then heading out to the school in Westchester just didn't feel right. I was going to these lavish banquets for sweet 16s, and there was like the Viennese table and Porsches and
totally foreign. Right?
Yeah, I had no friends. I used to sit with like one Vietnamese exchange student, and I was just like, I got to get out of here. And then I became friends with a girl named Maria Manganello, and we used to just break out. We called the nun Q-tip, and we'd run and we'd jump on the bus. Anyway, long story short, I went to LaGuardia. I got myself out of there, and I was like, you know what? I can't take it at this complacency. I can't fit myself in. And now in hindsight, I probably could have been just fine. I would have adapted, but it was good to know that I had the power to make the exit.
Yeah, but I think you have to listen to that fire sometimes.
Definitely.
And make a move.
Yeah.
Especially at that point in your life, it's unstable feeling as it is,
it is.
Being a teenager. And then I think just creating that environment where you feel like you can grow and thrive is really important.
Yes.
You feel, I went through a lot of that too. I went to a bunch of different public schools and they all sucked. I didn't feel at home at any of them.
Yeah, that's the sense of feeling at home.
Yeah. And it led to me dropping out of two high schools, and not even getting a high school diploma. I rebounded. I made it happen. But
clearly.
Yeah. So talk to us about LaGuardia. What did you do at LaGuardia? I mean, it's kind of a different. Or was it at the time? Was it? I didn't go to high school in New York, so I don't know if it was as diverse as it is now.
It was extremely diverse.
Yeah.
And from where I came from, it was a whole big eye opener, and I wasn't used to hang out with so many different people, but I quickly made a group of friends. And I think the biggest thing I learned from high school was that I can commute from the Bronx and get up at 6, take the bus and the train and another bus and walk across town. And I was resilient. I felt like, I could handle this. I didn't think I could.
It was a tough time too. It's not
the
like
trains were crazy.
Safest time.
And hey,
we're
back. It feels the same. I feel like I'm back in the early.
Right now?
Yeah, I do.
And I've heard so many people say
it's
that.
It's freaky to me, honestly. But this is where self-defense came in for me. There'd always be some flasher at the subway station.
I was going to say, it wasn't because of the Albanian shootouts.
Well, that played a part
a little
in it
bit
too. Yeah. I think it was just the city was rough. Alphabet City was nuts. The Tompkins Square Revolt. I was there. I was like partying next door to it. And there was a lot of stuff going down. And I think what really helped me grow as a human was understanding the street smarts. And I felt like, hey, I see things go down. I used to think you'd want to stick around and look for it, but no, because guns come out and things happen. And I remember running down the back streets with the Skadanks because it was at their show and a gunfire broke out and we were nearest to the back door. Like, I am running. I'm not sticking around to look at stuff.
Casual victim of any silliness like that ends up like all your awesomeness real quick, right?
Yeah, I mean, you just got to be street smart. And I think the quicker we can raise our children to be street smart anywhere, in any situation, and not like, oh, there's doom and gloom around every corner. But hey, know your crazies, understand the crazies, and guess
be able
what?
To point it out and be like, yo, that's crazy.
Yeah, hey, don't stick around.
Right.
We can move.
And it's also, I mean, it's good for resiliency. If you are going to branch out on your own and be your own boss, you gotta have some thick skin and seeing
you gotta know your people.
Then seeing a lot of that stuff will help you if you're coming like straight out of school. You've been incubated in some school environment and you didn't grow up seeing anything kind of crazy, and all of a sudden, boom,
right?
Because the vultures are coming after you. No
I
matter
see that.
what.
Yeah. I mean, I see people who move to the city and they feel that it's don't want to offend anybody. And I've seen even one of our students walking down the street with a crazy person behind them, and she just put her head down.
Right.
And she just like slumped down the block. I was like, oh no, you cross the street with me. Like, we are going over there.
Yeah.
It's like a different approach. And it's not like saying everybody, you just have to know good and evil.
This has been said a lot of times in the dojo too. Like, what point in history would it have been okay, like in human history, to like put your head down and not be aware of like craziness. If you weren't running from
No.
wild animals, it was other humans who were they were going to do whatever they were going to do because
Well, freeze
they
is a
were
common
savages.
physiological response to fear, right? So we always
Freeze,
think
yeah.
about flight and
Yeah.
fight, but freeze is much more common, and you see it
Yeah,
all the
especially
time.
these days. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just it's just not talked about as much, but it's very much a human response to stress.
Yeah.
You know, and it's just like all things you have to train it to
Mhm.
get through
Right,
it. You have to
right.
train it. Yeah.
'Cause we can get into that a little more later too.
Yeah.
I feel like this could go on forever. This is gonna be one of those epic. You don't have another show, right? After this, Sam, we got like 3-hour Joe Rogan podcast.
Oh,
No,
man.
I'm kidding.
I'm gonna be thirsty.
There's water. Yeah, lots of water. So did you study anything in particular at LaGuardia?
I did fine art.
And what does that mean?
To me, that means like 4 periods a day of painting.
Oh, okay. So you were doing visual
We
art.
were doing visual art. Yeah, we were
nice.
doing nude drawing. Literally in high school, we had nude drawing.
Well,
We had
just find
some
that
character
flasher.
teachers.
Find that
Yeah.
flasher on the train.
I already sketched it, Miss.
You were like, hey, we can actually make you some money.
Mr. said I already did this on the subway coming in. I'm sorry, I don't have to do it. I think about the teachers that I had that I really, really think about like the most. And there's one, Mr. Aceta. If anybody went to LaGuardia High School, he was just like that. You know, he was just so strict.
Yeah.
You had to be in on time, and I always had
Was
these
the art teacher that was strict?
Oh my gosh,
Odd. That's so odd.
he was so uber strict. But like I flourished in his class,
Great.
and when I thought about
Mhm.
later on, like what was best about high school was like, wow, Mr. Aceta was such a whip cracker, but I put out so much art under him and so much painting, and it was interesting.
Well, that kind of coincides with another saying I've heard many times is that the freedom is in the discipline.
Hmm.
So a lot of artists, like I went to school for music and surrounded by art, and this like abandonment of discipline often, just like I have to be creative. And,
Right.
when I was in school, I would hear that too. When I was in college for music, some of the professors would say that, and to me it was foreign. I was like, no, I
Yeah.
gotta be a rebel. I gotta be a creator, you know?
Yeah.
And then it came full circle when I started martial arts, and I was like, oh shit, this is for real. Like
Right.
I should have listened the first time around.
It's funny how it
Because-
hits you at different levels
big time.
throughout your life. You're like, oh, that's what that meant.
And that's been my experience in the martial arts, just in general. It's like it everything that I heard for the first nearly 40 years of my life, I ignored.
Right.
You know, it was
I
like that
understand
woodpecker tapping, and I was like, oh. And then all of a sudden, in the context of self-defense
Mhm.
and the physical movement and the mental and everything, then it all kind of came together, and I was like, oh man, I fucked up so many things by not.
But that was what you needed to do.
It's what it
Because
had
you
to
need the
happen.
contrast. Yeah.
And it's all that's been the story for me for the last 4 years since meeting you all and hopping in, and it's been really amazing. So we're going to take a short break. We'll digress on that a little more when we come back. You're listening to the Entrepreneurial Web. We'll see you in a few minutes.